Mangwana ni Malelepo Vanave Africa. Welcome to Africa Good Morning, where we are broadcasting the news making headlines across Africa. My name is Aina Raiza Koya, and alongside me is Eshwan Berry on a Monday morning.
And
Welcome back, and here are the news-making headlines. Suspected jihadists kill 30 civilians in central Mali. Suspected jihadists killed at least 30 civilians in an attack on a passenger vehicle in central Mali's Watal Mapti, local officials said on Saturday. The passengers were sprayed with bullets and the vehicle was torched during an attack by terrorists near the town of Bandagaira on Friday, the officials told the AFP. The state has sent security forces to the scene, they said, speaking on condition of anonymity. An elected official in Bandagaira confirmed the death toll, saying the victims included women and children. The attack has not been claimed by any of the numerous armed groups active in the West African country. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken on Saturday expressed deep concern during a visit to Dakar, Senegal, for the stability of neighboring Mali and violence in Ethiopia. Mali has been struggling to contain an Islamist insurgency that first erupted in the north in 2012 and has since claimed thousands of military and civilian lives. Despite the presence of the thousands of French and UN troops, the conflict has engulfed central Mali and spread to the neighboring Burkina Faso and Niger.
Rebels kill police officer in Central African Republic. An attack by rebels killed a police officer in Southern Central African Republic, a region plagued by fighting between armed groups and the army, the government said on Saturday. The rebels struck the town of Kowango near the border with the Democratic Republic of Congo on Thursday and looted several households, as well as killing the on-duty officer, the government said on its Facebook page. The Central African Republic, the second least developed country in the world according to UN rankings, was plunged into a bloody civil war after a coup in 2013. The conflict has calmed over the past 3 years, although large swathes of territory remain outside central government control. President Faustin Archange Touadera issued a unilateral ceasefire declaration in October, saying all but 2 of the main armed rebels groups had agreed to put down their weapons. The sweep will continue to eliminate the danger from the elements of the UPC, which still violates the ceasefire decreed by the president, the premier's office said in a statement. 30 civilians and 2 soldiers were killed last week in attacks carried out by the R3 rebel group in the country's northwest.
In our next story, Gambians vote in first presidential election since a dictatorship. Gambians began voting on Saturday in the first presidential election in a tiny West African nation since former dictator Yahya Jammeh fled into exile. The voting will be closely watched as a test of the democratic transition in Gambia, where Jammeh ruled for over 22 years after seizing power in a bloodless coup in 1994. The ex-autocrat was forced into exile in Equatorial Guinea in January 2017 after Adama Barrow, then a relative known, defeated him at the ballot box. President Barrow, who's now 56, is now running for the re-election and faces 5 other candidates. Polls opened at 8 a.m. with long lines forming well before dawn in the capital, Banjul. Nearly 500 people lined up around the block at the market in Banjul, neighboring of Manjai Kuda, ready for hours of waiting. Many voters in the impoverished nation of more than 2 million people are hoping for an improvement in their living standards. The Gambia, a silver land of about 400 480 kilometers long, which is surrounded by Senegal, is one of the poorest countries in the world. About half of the population live on less than 1.90 cent dollars per day, the World Bank says.
Now in Zimbabwe, Mnangagwa signs dreaded spy bill into law. President Emerson Mnangagwa has signed into law the controversial Cybersecurity and Data Protection Bill, which passed through the Senate in July 2021 and was awaiting presidential assent. Among other provisions, the statute seeks to provide for data protection with due regards to the Declaration of Rights enshrined in the Constitution and to uphold public and national interests. It will also see the creation of the Data Protection Authority, which will replace the Postal Telecommunication Regulatory Authority of Zimbabwe. The new authority shall be mandated to, among other functions, regulate the manner in which personal information held by access providers such as Econet, Net1, and Telecel may be processed. The act will also criminalize offenses such as the transmission of data messages inciting violence or damage to property, sending threatening data messages, hacking, cyberbullying, and posting of sexually explicit content without consent of the data subject. While initiators of the legislation argue it will create and promote a technology-driven business environment and encourage technology development and the lawful use of tech gadgets, antagonists view the law in a bad light. The Crisis in Zimbabwe Coalition says it is rattled by Mnangagwa's government's determination to restrict freedom of speech and expression through the deployment of a cyber team to monitor citizens on social media. They say monitoring what people send and receive was tantamount to invasion of privacy.
Libyan court clears Gaddafi's son, Saif al-Salam, for presidential election contest. A Libyan court ruled on Thursday that the son of the late Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi can compete in upcoming presidential elections, overturning a decision by the country's top electoral body to disqualify him. A court in the southern province of Sabah ruled in favor of Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, Libyan media outlets reported. For almost a week, the court had been unable to convene to hear the appeal after the building was surrounded by armed men who prevented judges from entering. Last week, Libya's High National Election Committee had disqualified him, citing past convictions linked to using violence against protesters. The candidate had appealed the ruling. The first round of the voting is meant to start on the 24th of December, though a number of decisive issues need to be resolved before then. It remains unclear whether any further legal challenges could be made to Saif al-Islam candidacy. In a Twitter post late on Thursday, he thanked the judges for risking their personal safety, saying they had done so in the name of the truth. He also thanked his family for the support.
Ethiopia shuts schools to aid harvest of fighters' crop fields. Ethiopia said on Thursday it was closing secondary schools for a week to allow students to help in harvesting crop fields left behind by civilians who enlisted in the military. The order was given by Addis Ababa's Education Ministry, the Xinhua news agency reported, citing local broadcaster Fana. Thousands of people have answered Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's call to join the country's armed forces to defeat a rebel uprising in the north and center of the country. Last week, Abiy himself joined the front line to oversee operations against the rebels. Abiy has called on rebel soldiers to surrender. September to February are a major crop harvesting season in Ethiopia, but in the Tigray, Afar, and Amhara regions, fighting has disrupted farming, prompting warnings of serious food shortages.
Zimbabwe's main airport operating without radar. Planes are landing at the Zimbabwe's main international airport without any radar system to guide air traffic controllers, a lawmaker said in a video released on Friday. We cannot continue to operate without a proper radar system. It is very dangerous in terms of security, said Oscar Jorerino, head of the Parliament Budget Committee, during a Parliament session recorded on Thursday. Zimbabwe has already contracted with China Harbour Equipment Company to upgrade the radar at the Robert Mugabe International Airport in Harare. The Export-Import Bank of China loaned Zimbabwe $153 million to upgrade the airport, including radar system, the committee had.
U.S. guarantees support for demining process in BA province. Demining operators have removed more than 714,000 unexploded devices, leaving a total of 333 demined areas in the BA province mine-free. According to the provincial deputy governor for technical services and infrastructure, Antonio Manuel, BA currently has 101 more fields to be cleared and 4 suspended areas due to difficulty caused by heavy rains which are currently hitting the central region of the country. He praised the role of the Halo Trust, the National Demining Institute, the Central Demining Brigade of the 4th Infantry Division, and the Demining Brigade of the Military House of the President of the Republic, which cooperation in this field will certainly reduce the accident rates caused by mines and explosive devices. The economic attaché of the U.S. Embassy in Angola, Benjamin Cullets, said that his country will finance demining projects in the BA province in order to accelerate compliance with the plan aimed at ridding Angola of mines by 2022.
South Africa, massive blow for wildlife coast. Urgent interdict denied. Court refuses to interdict systemic survey on the basis that irreparable harm to the marine species could not be proved. After outlining the legal test applicable to the granting interim interdicts and the significance of determining whether the applicants or the respondents would suffer irreparable harm if the interim interdict was granted, the judge reviewed the evidence presented by parties. The court concluded that the applicants had failed to convince him that there was a reasonable apprehension of irreparable harm if the interdict were not granted, and that given financial and other prejudice to Shell if the seismic survey were delayed and balance of convenience was in Shell's favor. The applicant will be discussing the judgment with their legal advisors with the view of deciding whether or not to apply for leave to appeal against the aspect of the judgment. In the interim, we will be doing all we can to support the applicant made yesterday on behalf of the Wild Coast committees who are seeking to interdict the seismic surveys on the basis that Shell does not have an environmental authorization to undertake them.
In the last of our top stories, 2 hippos in Belgian zoo test positive for COVID-19. 2 hippos have tested positive for COVID-19 at Antwerp Zoo in Belgium in what could be the first reported case in the species, zoo staff said. Hippos Imani, aged 14, and 41-year-old Hermione have no symptoms apart from a runny nose, but the zoo said the pair had been put into quarantine as a precaution. To my knowledge, this is the first time in this species. Worldwide, this virus has been reported mainly in great apes and felines, said the zoo's vet Francis Verkerman. The coronavirus is thought to have jumped from an animal to a human, and it is proved to have passed from humans to animals. The disease has also spread in mink farms and to wild animals such as deers. Antwerp Zoo is investigating the causes of the contagion. None of the zookeepers had recently shown COVID-19 symptoms or tested positive for the virus, the zoo said. It seems like COVID-19 leaves no one behind. Yikes, everyone needs to be careful. This is Still Africa. Good morning, bringing you the news as you need it. After the break, we'll be talking to environmentalist and geologist Jan Ackert. Stick around.
Win instant cash this spring with Top Score Instant. To enter, buy any new pack of Top Score Instant 1 kg or 500 grams from any store countrywide and stand a chance to win one of 2 grand prizes of $20,000 Namibian or one of 12 weekly prizes of $5,000 Namibian. SMS Instant to 24442. Competition ends 30 November 2021. T's and C's apply. Top Score Instant, a proud product of Namib Mills.
Now, Jan Ackert is a geologist and a well-qualified environmentalist. We've had him on this show as a guest before as a geologist, and he has made the case why any shale oil found in the Kavango regions or the Okavango River Delta in Botswana can only be extracted through the process of fracking, in other words, unconventional production. Good morning, sir. Welcome back to Africa. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me once again. It's a pleasure.
Good to have you. Now, what would you make of the current status of the Canadian gas and oil exploration company Reconnaissance Energy Africa, known in short as Recon Africa?
Yeah, there's been some interesting developments over the last couple of weeks. The seismic survey was made available, should I say, part of the seismic survey were made available to the investors now on the 5th of November. And yeah, myself and a couple of fellow geologists had an opportunity to scrutinize and look through it. But I think the more interesting aspect of what's happened over the last couple of weeks is the almost carte blanche attitude that Recon Africa have taken to this seismic survey and the exploration program that they've entered into, proceeding without any further EIAs. They indicated that they're prepared to start drilling additional holes now, beginning of the first quarter of 2020. And it was very, very interesting to note that Minister Shifeta spoke from Glasgow at the COP26 conference, indicated that there will be no further drilling until there's an environmental impact assessment completed. But it just shows a little bit of the dichotomy between the thinking of the company and the processes that have to be followed. Due process must be followed. But I think one of the more alarming things that have become available to us in the last couple of weeks is that it's now been shown and confirmed that the holding ponds that they drilled, the mud holding ponds that were drilled at Mbambi and Kawi, have not been, the solid wastes were not taken to a proper landfill site, proper due processing and treatment, and neither were the liquids. The liquids were allowed to either evaporate or seep into the ground. Obviously, there's a bit of both that would have taken place because we know that those facilities were not lined. But I think it just shows a little bit of the glib attitude of the company, where they do not follow due process. Those wastes, as we know from right around the world, contain all kinds of toxins, be they volatile organic compounds, hypersaline brine from the deep water that they would have intersected while they were drilling, and also naturally occurring radioactive materials. That is what would have been sitting in those ponds and has now been allowed to evaporate or seep into the ground. And the solids that remain have been just blatantly bulldozed over, covered with soil from the peripheral edges, and no waste treatment has occurred. This is clearly not in the best interest of Namibia, of the people of Kavango, and certainly has a huge potential to exacerbate or aggravate the pollution, the groundwater pollution in the area. So we are looking at this with extreme concern, and we have to look at getting some scientific results, some real data, so that we can actually prove that this is in fact what has occurred and what the potential long-term implications are. And that's really of huge concern to us at the moment.
All right, what is the newest development as regards the seismic assessment that was supposed to remain on existing roads, yet has proven to have been wild cutting right through the forests?
Yes, in typical fashion, we were told, not only in writing, but at various meetings and so on during the EIA process, that all the seismics would only occur along existing paths and tracks in northern in Kabanga. Well, blow me down, it wasn't long thereafter that we were told that 5% of the route needed to be cleared, and they referred to it as fire breaks. Well, typically, I don't know that many fire breaks are normally cut in that part of the world, but suddenly fire breaks were a necessity. We knew right from the outset, and I made right submissions. Frack Free Namibia made submissions to state that we knew that this was going to be the case. It was, in fact, by my own calculation, that it was 10%. So we work on the 5%, a number that Recon tell us. I'm not sure that their credibility is so great, so I'm not sure that I'm convinced that I trust their numbers. But be that as it may, the the seismic survey has been concluded. They made some very, very sketchy information available to the public and to the investors now on the 5th of November. Information that, quite frankly, from a basic schoolboy type of scenario, was pathetic. Normally one would say, if you do a section like that, you would show it on a map where it comes from, how it links in, etc., etc. You would have your east and your west signs on your cross sections. They would be correctly annotated. None of that was included in the information made available by Recon Africa. So it just shows the attitude that they have towards public scrutiny of their information. But be that as it may, I have had an opportunity to have a look, and I've made some assumptions, obviously, because they didn't give me the full information. But I have had a look at some of those seismic sections. And what really is very, very apparent is that the so-called Kabanga Basin that was up to 9,000 meters, 30,000 feet in depth, clearly does not exist. It is very apparent that the seismic shows that the basement rocks that at the bottom, I don't want to get into details, are in the order of 2,800, 3,000 odd meters. So it's nowhere near the depth of the basin that they profess to have discovered. The other interesting aspect of it is that it would appear that the basement tends to shallow out towards the east. Now, bear in mind that Recon Africa were also looking to move their operations, the exploration operations, onto the Botswana side of the border, further east, and the seismic seem to show that is going to be a likely scenario. We obviously still awaiting their full-scale report and their assessment of what they've achieved, the data that they've achieved. But once again, I have to emphasize, in a typical exploration exercise, you do your seismic first and then you do your drilling.
Yes.
They have gone about it in a very, very strange manner, and we wait for their response to their seismic data. I love hearing what they have to say and how they're going to spin it, but we look forward to that.
Interesting. But Mr. Acker, do you agree that Recon Africa, as a junior oil company, is essentially just doing what other oil companies are doing and have been doing for years?
Yes, absolutely. Of course, we know, and we see it here extensively. I saw in your news insert the work that is being done by Shell off our Wild Coast. I am following that very, very closely, and am very involved with various legal studies and legal challenges on the Shell story. But this is an ongoing issue in Africa. It would almost appear that Africa is now open for business, and particularly oil and gas exploration. Recon Africa is not unique. We have it here in South Africa. We had it, very much so in the Karoo where I live, looking at the fracking option, and fortunately we seem to have quietened that one down. It just doesn't lend itself to fracking, but it is an ongoing story. There is exploration activities that are taking place in Zimbabwe. We know what's happening in Kenya and in Uganda, where pipelines are being built across the national parks. So this is an ongoing thing, and often it is, I call it a smash and grab. Despite the international
sorry, Mr.
energy.
Ackers, we hate to interrupt you, but we just have
I beg
one
your
more
pardon.
question.
I carry on.
No worries. We certainly appreciate, the in-depth answers. But tell us a little more about the latest endeavor of an oil company along the South African wild coast, less than a month after COP26. And if you can, try to keep it as brief as possible.
Sure, absolutely. Shell popped out of the woodwork. They acquired the rights to this block just off the Wild Coast from a South African company, Impact Oil, and based on the rights issued in 2014. I beg your pardon, 2013, they decided now and announced in October that they were going to begin the seismic exploration off the Wild Coast. It has taken us absolutely by storm how the popular outcry has really pricked people's imagination and has made people, quite frankly, very, very angry. My wife attended a demonstration yesterday. People are angry because this is big oil. Despite our climate change, despite the COP26, despite what the International Energy Agency is telling us, despite all of the facts and all of the science, big energy is still going ahead. And the most treacherous, dangerous waters of our coast, they disregard the risks and think that they can do this and bulldoze and basically just go ahead without buy-in from the South African population, much as Recon Africa has done in Namibia, might I add. So we are outraged. That's the basic.
Yes,
That's the bottom line.
so.
We are outraged.
Yeah, especially on the back of COP26. Thank you very much, Mr. Jan Ackert, for sharing your expertise with us and disseminating that important information.
Thank you so much for having me.
Always good to have you on Africa Good Morning. We were just having a chat with Mr. Jan Ackert, a geologist and a very qualified environmentalist, letting us know what's happening with Recon Africa and, of course, mining in Africa, Southern Africa in general. This is still Africa Good Morning. After the break, we'll be crossing over to Zambia, chatting with Mike Sichula.
Strike it gold and win 5,000 Namibian dollars in cash with Neo Paints. Simply buy Neo Paints products from the selected range and stand a chance to get one of 12 mystery buckets filled with gold paint. All 12 winners will each get 3 extra paint buckets equal to their purchase. One to replace the gold paint, the second to use on your project, and the third to give to a charity of their choice. One winner can score another 10,000 Namibian dollars by showing us your creative use of the golden paint. The best project wins the cash. Offer is valid from 27 September to 18 December at your favorite hardware store nationwide. Visit us at neopaints.com for more competition details and follow us on Facebook for weekly competition updates. Neopaints, a coat of excellence.
Rape culture is the social environment that allows violence against women and girls to be normalized. This environment is fueled by gender inequalities, attitudes, and the sexualization of women. To end rape culture, we have to accept that it exists and reject the degradation of women and uncontrollable hypersexuality of men as the norm. No one asks for nor deserves to be raped. Every day, we have the opportunity to be better and to examine our behavior. Join me by speaking out online and offline, and together we can bring an end to rape culture in our communities.
I'm gonna cross that river, Jordan. Yes, I am. I'm gonna leave my heart wide open. Yes, I am. Let me tell you, baby, yes, I am. Yes, I am. Oh, baby, yes, I am. Yes, I am. Yeah, baby, yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Welcome back to Africa Good Morning. Health authorities in the capital of Lusaka have detected the new COVID-19 variant Omicron. Mike Sichula has this story and more. Good morning, Mike. Please take it away.
Of December, health authorities in Zambia, using the geometric sequencing at the University of Zambia detected 3 cases of the Omicron variant amongst individuals who had tested positive in the last 1 week. So these 3 individuals, 2 of them are fully vaccinated against COVID-19. Then 1 of them is not vaccinated. Then they have a history of having traveled out of the country in the last 2 weeks. So the announcement that has been made by the Minister of Health has actually now led to health authorities in the country to intensify vaccinations and also to intensify enforcement of guidelines to ensure that the variant does not cause negative effects on the economy. As you all know that with a lockdown, there's a number of issues that can happen to economy, such as Zambia. But health authorities have said what we are going to do is to ensure that people are vaccinated. In the picture there, that is the Minister of Health, Silva Masebo. When she announced the revised guidelines, one of which was to ensure that if you are going to enter a government building, you must have a card of proof to say you've been vaccinated. That decision has been challenged in the constitution, in the courts of law, by one of the lawyers who says that is against the country's constitution. That issue is yet to take off as to whether the minister erred when she said that. But despite that, the minister has gone ahead to say the country does not have an option of even if it is not mandatory vaccination, the country does not have an option to ensure that people get vaccinated. Remember, Zambia has not attained the required vaccination rate. We are still below 10%, and the target of the government is to vaccinate at least 2 million people by 31st December 2021.
All right, now barely 5 months in office, the new administration led by President Hakainde Hichilema has secured an IMF bailout package worth 1.4 billion US dollars. Could you please get into that?
Yes, according to a statement issued by the IMF mission chief to Zambia, Addison Holland, the IMF has reached a staff-level agreement with authorities in Zambia on a 3-year program that could be supported by an arrangement under the extended credit facility in the amount of about 1.4 billion United States dollars. So this money will be dispersed between 2020 and 2025. There are 4 pillars under which this money will have to be used. One is economic transformation, then social and economic development, then environmental sustainability, as well as good governance. So these are the 4 pillars under which this money will have to be utilized by the Zambian government. Today, the Minister of Finance and the mission chief of Zambia are going to have a media briefing to explain full details of how this IMF bailout package is going to be administered. Remember, Zambia has been pushing for the IMF bailout since 2011. Under the previous administration, the bailout package has been underway. So this achievement within this period of time has excited even President Hakainde Hichilema, who says this shows that the international community has faith in him. But there are issues surrounding the conditionalities of this bailout package. So we're expected to hear those today when the Minister of Finance addresses the meeting.
All right, in football news, the under-20 Copper Queens have over the weekend recorded a 0-0 draw against Ghana in the Costa Rica 2022 World Cup qualifying round of matches. Please tell us more.
Yeah, so this match ended 0-0 and putting the Zambian team into a very difficult position going into Accra on 18th December. So the outcome of this match has actually made it more difficult for the Zambian team, under-20 national team, to qualify for the FIFA World Cup to be held in Costa Rica in 2022. It is also expected that maybe when the team goes to Accra, if they can force a scoring draw, then they would qualify. But the chances are now very difficult, knowing what normally happens in West Africa regarding these matches. Then lastly, as I conclude, there were 3 teams that were participating for Zambia in continental football. Out of all those 4 teams, I mean, only one has now qualified to the group stage of the CAF Confederation Cup. That is Zanaco Football Club. Late Arrows lost to beat Simba by 2-1, but it was not enough. They needed to beat Simba by 4 unanswered goals to progress, but they didn't. Zanaco, who were away in Mali, lost 2-0, but because they had beaten Mali, the Malian side here by 3-0, they managed to go through on aggregate score of 3-2.
All right. Thank you very much, Mike, for bringing us the news from Zambia.
Africa, good morning. Thank you very much.
It's always good having you here. Something else that's always good to have, especially on a Monday morning, which tends to be blue for some, is good weather. Let's check out the forecast up next. Welcome back to Africa. Good morning. It's time for us to dive straight into your economic news stories. Majoro urges SMMEs to innovate. Prime Minister Mokwetsi Majoro says small, medium and micro enterprises should innovate to be sustainable and continue to create jobs in Lesotho. Speaking at the 16th Public-Private Consultative Forum last Thursday, Majoro said although SMMEs are the engine of Lesotho's economic growth, most remain beholden to the traditional ways of doing things. He warned that some might not survive if they don't innovate and move with the changing times. The Prime Minister said he was worried that most SMMEs are not using technology. Dr. Timothy Tamé, the acting coordinator at the National University of Lesotho Innovation Hub, said innovation hubs play a significant role in the emergence of new businesses. He mentioned that research, incubation, acceleration, and mass production are key in innovation. Research, he said, provides rare insights that other competitors do not have.
Ramaphosa, look to Africa for sustainable economic recovery. President Cyril Ramaphosa will visit Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and Senegal as part of the African Continental Free Trade Area. In his weekly letter to the nation, Ramaphosa said South Africa was instrumental in terms of responding to the impact of the pandemic on human health, society, and economies. Thanks to South African effort, the establishment of the African Medical Supply Platform saw the light, enabling countries to procure personal protective equipment and medical supplies. And though African vaccine acquisition task teams, millions of vaccine doses were secured for the continent, Ramaphosa said the focus should be on sustainable economic recovery. Ramaphosa visits 4 West African countries in this week: Nigeria, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and Senegal as part of the African Continental Free Trade. He said African countries have for far too long, trained our gaze on trade and investment opportunities in markets beyond the continent, such as Europe, Asia, and North America.
Businesses in South Africa could require unvaccinated employees to take regular COVID tests. At face value, requiring unvaccinated employees to produce negative COVID-19 test results regularly rather than being fully vaccinated appears to be justifiable as a reasonable accommodation measure to minimize COVID-19 health and safety risks in the workplace, says legal experts at law firm ENS South Africa. The frequency and efficacy of the chosen test must achieve the desired purpose of ensuring a healthy and safe work environment as far as reasonably practicable. The question of whether the production of a negative test is one aspect that an employer must consider when implementing a testing regime. However, the question in most employers' minds is who will pay? Of course, where unvaccinated employees are happy to pay for the test themselves, there is unlikely to be an issue. Where discord is created by requiring employees to pay for testing, employers should expect legal challenges. Similarly, it might be justifiable that the costs are shared between the employer and employee, the firm said. Ultimately, employers should guard against too robust of an approach when navigating legitimate objections to vaccinations, as it might be seen as punitive.
Those were our economic news stories. Now it's time for economic indicators.
Now, welcome back to Africa. Good morning. It's time for us to get into your sports news stories. I'm a bit flabbergasted because of the upcoming story, because as far as media ratings heaven goes, Formula One is headed for maybe one of the biggest events, possibly of the century, because after the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix, Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen are not just neck and neck, they're ear to ear, eye to eye. Ari Hochart is here to bring us this and more sports stories.
Yes, very good morning, Ashwin. Yes, indeed, it is ear to ear. They were wheel to wheel as well the weekend, so it was very competitive, very tough. It was it was the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix that took place. It was very eventful. It was at the time, even I think, was the description of. Just to look at what happened there, it was Lewis Hamilton won the race in the end. There were 3 times that there was a restart or 2 restarts, 2 red flags in the race. But Lewis Hamilton won in the end. His skills came through and the speed of the Mercedes-Benz. He won, and Max Verstappen was in 2nd place. So that means they're going into the last race of the season neck and neck, absolutely tied on 369 points each, all to race for this coming weekend, and that would be in Abu Dhabi. The season-ending race there. In the Constructors' Championship, it is Mercedes-Benz leading by quite a margin now, 587 points to 559 of Red Bull, and they just need 17 points, Mercedes, in the last race to win the Constructors' Championship. So all to look for, exciting racing. It was chaotic, it was confrontational, but in the end, Lewis Hamilton came through to win. Let's go on to some soccer news and some football news, and there's always lots of emotion in football as well, if your team won the weekend or not. And so news from the weekend was that block leaders Chelsea, they lost against West Ham. That was 3-2, so they're not leading at the moment still. The news from the weekend is more that Manchester City beat Watford by 3-1, and they're leading now on 35 points after 15 games. Liverpool also squeezing a win right at the end in injury time. That was against Wolverhampton, and that secured for them a win of 1-0. And they're 2nd on the list now, on the log, on 34 points, just 1 behind Manchester City, and Chelsea just 1 point back now, 33 points after that loss to West Ham. And also Manchester United, they had a good start with the new coach, Ralf Rangnick from Germany. And a tight game for them, their first game at home to Crystal Palace, and Manchester United win that game yesterday by 1-0. And today, Ashwin, there's a game for you. That is Arsenal. They're playing tonight against Everton. That game is at Everton. On to some rugby news. There was some rugby played in South Africa as well. That was 2 games in the United Rugby Championship League. That's done for December now. There's no more rugby for Southern African teams. They will play again the 8th of January, and that is action from the game at the Cape Town Stadium. The Stormers that hosted the Lions, and the visiting team, the Lions, way too good for the Stormers. A bit of a surprise for the Stormers, not playing well at all at home in the new stadium, the Cape Town Stadium. And the Lions that win that game by 37 points to 19. And it's also, there was a game in Durban. It was the Sharks that hosted the Bulls. So also a bit of a surprise in that one, in that the Bulls was the form side most of the season, and it was the Sharks that showed they've got big depth and new players that came in, some Springboks that made a difference on the weekend, and it is the Sharks that won that game by 30 points to 16. And then also on the 7th circuit, it was the Dubai Sevens. It was the 2nd consecutive weekend. You can say it's Dubai Sevens for the 2nd time almost, and the Blitzboks there on the photo, the South African Blitzbok team, showed that last weekend was not by chance. They won again. It was a tight final this weekend. They played against Australia in the final, and they won by 10 points to 7. And that is consecutive wins for the Blitzboks then in the 7th circuit, 7th series in Dubai. They had teams to contend with like Great Britain, Ireland, Australia, and Argentina. But unfortunately, teams like New Zealand and Fiji not playing because of COVID-19. But still a great win for the South African Blitzboks. On to some golf news. There were 2 big tournaments happening. The South African Open was the big one for Southern African interest that was played at Sun City. pity that it wasn't co-sanctioned by the European Tour because of the Omicron variant. That is Oliver Becker. He came close to winning the tournament. He came in second, just one shot back to Daniel van Tonder of South Africa was the winner in the end. He closed with a round of 65 for winning total of minus 16. That's Daniel van Tonder. Oliver Becker second in minus 15. He's from Stellenbosch. And then other two names like I mentioned, Dean Burmeister playing under the South African born in 7 under, and Christian Besaidnout, the defending champion. The USA, it is international players in the world that played there. It was won by 3 after. Close off real quick, some tennis news. There was Davis Cup that was played yesterday, and it was the Russian Federation.
We seem to be having issues getting you clearly over on our side. You were about to talk about the Davis Cup tennis competition. We hope to look more into that, but thank you for bringing us the sports news from South Africa, of course, reporting on everything happening internationally. This is Still Africa. Good morning. After the break, your headlines. Africa Good Morning streams live every weekday from 7 a.m. bringing you news from the Southern African region as well as everything happening around the African continent and the world at large. Now, if you missed our top stories at the top of the hour, worry not, here are some of the headlines. Suspected jihadists kill 30 civilians in central Mali. Rebels kill police officer in Central African Republic. Gambians vote in first presidential election since dictatorship. Zimbabwe, Mnangagwa signs dreaded spy bill into law. Majoro urges SMMEs to innovate. And in sport, Formula One racing, Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen did battle in Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, with Lewis Hamilton taking that one. Those have been our stories.
We thank you very much for joining us on Africa Good Morning. We do welcome your remarks regarding our show. You can email them to us. Our email is agm_2centsworth@nmh.com.na. Alternatively, we are on Facebook and Twitter. That's at Africa Good Morning. We also have a website. It's called One Up To, and on there you will find all our shows. Get vaccinated, wear your mask, and avoid unnecessary public gatherings. Omicron is amongst us.
Stay safe. Suraj Kanaka.